Roger, Tango for landing, 3,000 feet. You're looking great.
This is the podcast where inspiring leaders share their stories to empower you, unlock your potential, and create a winning mindset for your future. My name is Luke Murphy, the UK Entrepreneur of the Year, and my co-host is thought leader Kim Adele. Welcome to Global Futurists. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Kim Adele. Good morning, Christine.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, welcome to Global Futurists. My name is Luke Murphy.
And I'm Kim Adele, and it's lovely to see you here, Kirsten. And I'm loving the birds in the background. Not at all jealous about your beautiful setting in Spain.
I can't actually lie to you. This is fully staged. Well, not staged. I am not just flown here for the occasion. I actually live in Spain, but I thought, just perhaps to cheer you up, I could just show you a little bit of sunshine. Although I know it's been good in the UK, hasn't it?
It has. But there is just something, I don't know, just something that's so lovely about seeing Spain. Probably because we're all so desperate for a holiday right now and can't have one. So it's nice to have a little bit of voyeurism into your world. So thank you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. And it's lovely to have everyone who's joined us on the podcast, Apple Podcasts, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course on the website, cxm.co.uk, and find us there. So we're really excited to have you here, and we're really excited to have, most of all, Kirsten Ebouter. Welcome.
Yeah, I know. We should have practiced that, shouldn't we? That.
I know.
It's Kirsten.
Right.
Okay, it's Kirsten Ebouter. I've actually lived in the UK for a very long time, so Kirsten is fine too. I stopped kind of correcting people up after year one.
After year one, before you could speak. Yeah. Okay.
So, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, it's over to Kim Adele, who's going to tell us about your wonderful experience and what you're going to bring to us. Go for it, Kim Adele.
Absolutely. So I've had the pleasure of meeting Kirsten last year, and I've already heard her speak. So I know you're going to enjoy the conversation as much as I did, and my guests when she came to my previous event. So Kirsten is a business mentor. She's an author, a speaker, and she stands for doing work and life differently, as demonstrated by upping sticks and moving to beautiful Spain at the end of last year. She's a director of 2 tech companies and thinks the greatest strength of people and organizations is their ability to be agile, to meet new requirements and to evolve. She's worked in the psychology and corporate coaching space for over 25 years, working with companies such as Oracle, TomTom, the police, universities, and the countless entrepreneurs. So an amazing journey, and can't wait to hear more of your story. So Kirsten, over to you.
Hello. Well, good morning, everybody. What a delight to be here. Fantastic to connect. Can I just say, obviously, during lockdown in Spain, I've had many of these kind of meetings, get-togethers online, and I absolutely love the ability to have the tech opportunity to do this, as well as stay in touch with people. But it's also a really big part of what I preach, I guess. It's just that since the coronavirus crisis, a lot more people are open to the idea of working online and doing work a little bit differently. So whereas previously I was trying to preach to people about perhaps rethinking work structures, are offices needed? Do you really need to stay in a traffic jam for hours on end? Why are you staying in a job or running a business that you do not really get an awful lot of pleasure from? And those kind of topics. And I'm not saying for a moment they fell on deaf ears, because obviously the essence of my work is trying to get people to think a little bit differently. But for me, the coronavirus has all of a sudden opened up those topics much wider and has enabled people to actually see, well, yes, perhaps I don't have to go to the office every day, and perhaps I can work much more internationally because there are tech opportunities available. So that's been great. Having said that, just on the ground, I did move to Spain at the end of last year. I've moved countries a number of times, and it's been quite a challenge because Spain's been very, very hit by this virus. And there's a state of emergency here, so everything went on lockdown. And we just yesterday went into phase 1, which means that I could actually leave my gate and see life outside other than just going to the local supermarket. So things are moving forward, but I think there's great lessons to be learned from this situation, and hopefully for the better, if we can learn the lessons well.
Sure. Well, it's really good to have you. And, so I should say, how long have you been in Spain?
So just to rewind, I'm actually Dutch. So I was born and bred in the Netherlands. I lived for 26 years in the UK. Moved back to the Netherlands, which that at the time seemed a very good idea. But when you've been away from your home country for a long time and you go back, it wasn't quite the same. And we moved to Spain at the end of November 2019.
Right.
Had a wonderful experience, and then lockdown happened.
Just started to get the excitement, and then I guess you know your house really well now, though. So that's
yes, and
helpful, isn't it?
I have to say, Kim, we are blessed with a garden. So if you're not blessed with a garden at this time, it must have been even harder.
Yeah.
And of course, all of this ties in with my message of doing life and work differently. The move to Spain was motivated by the fact that you don't have to be confined necessarily to one space. And so being able to work remotely from a beautiful spot is really quite extraordinary. I do count my blessings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess my first question for you would be in terms of well, how do you get to do your central message? How do you get to do your central message to do life and work differently?
Well, first of all, I obviously work online. I have clients all over Europe and in the US, which means that a Zoom link, as now everybody is familiar with, Skype and so on, is super easy for me to actually take control of and speak to people wherever I am in the world. But it took some time to actually have that realization, because I also have worked in organizations a lot, and I have spoken to people on one-on-one basis in person in my coaching practice. So it was really a process over time where I thought, well, actually, you don't just live to work. You have work alongside, and the whole idea is it gives you a marvelous life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've slightly lost you.
Oh, did I lose you there?
That's
Are
right.
we back?
Yeah, I think you were so in awe by what you just said. You were speechless. We were. Okay, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually saying about arriving at that message of understanding that life can be done differently. I'm not sure if you can actually hear me right now.
I can. Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Well,
so I actually worked for a long time with people and realized that a lot of the time people do put their lives on hold, and that reflected directly back to me. The fact, actually, perhaps I do that a little bit as well. So I try to practice what I preach. You can actually live your life in the moment, and very often people live their lives according to rules that they think they have to get to a certain age, or perhaps the weekend or a holiday, before they can enjoy life. I think actually it's really important that you work with your talents and you get to reach your potential and not put it off to some better time, better day next year or in 10 years time.
Yeah, no, completely agree, because time is so precious, isn't it? And it's so short that we hear dreadful stories of people that have waited for something to, like retirement or something, and then unfortunately something happens where they're not able to enjoy it as much as they would like. So I think living for the here and now and making the most of every day is kind of critical for us all, isn't it?
Well, the one overriding feature in all the work I've done with people for over 25 years is that I started to see that people are so much better than they think they are, and what their experience in life has taught them. So they constantly measuring themselves to, they should be better, they should be doing something differently, and measuring themselves to certain standards that are not their own. Whereas if they actually reach for their talents, what really fires them up, what makes their heart sing, what makes them really passionate, that is something that will give you some great endurance in your career, in your business, wherever you are. Supposed to waiting for that day. I say, people might say, oh, well, once I retire, I'm going to do something different.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's so true. I think that really, if we could all do the things that make our hearts sing, then wouldn't that just send ripples of kindness out into the world? And imagine what a lovely place that would be. But you've done such an amazing amount of things over your career, and you're moving around countries. What have been some of the challenges and some of the victories that you've had along the way?
There's been many. I just wanted to respond to what you're saying there. If everybody was doing what they really loved or started with their natural talents, that would not just create a lot more kindness, which I agree with Kim, but it would also, I think, save an awful lot of heartache. It will save depression. It will create much greater engagement in organizations. It will get people to really see work not only as a means of making money, but it will give people greater purpose. And I think I always say to people, start with the heart, and tap into your own talents. If you swap the letters around of talent, you get latent. So it's not something that's always immediately obvious. You have to look for it in your life. And I guess that is straight away my answer to your next question, because I think that I didn't really fit in. I come from a family of teachers. My father was the head of a secondary school, which I attended. My mother was also in education. And so they had a very clear idea of what I ought to be doing. So you finish school, you go to university, you find a job. And really from a young age, that didn't sit well with me at all. But talking about doing it differently created massive problems at home. I think now looking back at it, that might be what inspired my move to London when I was 19 years old. Perhaps it wasn't a move, it was actually an escape. And it was a highlight as well as really a low point, because I was extremely lonely in London. I didn't speak English. I had no idea what I was doing there, other than I couldn't stay where I was anymore either. So what then happened was, I guess, a journey to the University of Life. Whilst my parents sent me brochure after brochure of interesting colleges and universities I should attend, I wasn't having any of it. So that was difficult because I trusted the wrong people. Through a lack of being able to speak English, I had various issues with translating things, both actually in language, but also emotionally, I think, incorrectly. But what's come out of it now is that it's really prepared me for the work scenario and the career life that I now have. But I never viewed it as such until perhaps quite recently. So that's been difficult. In the end, I did go to university and I did do all those various things, but it was a real roller coaster of a ride. And I would not have my parents help me, because it would have just pulled me into this sort of standard view they had of life. And I think for any of your listeners and viewers, I would encourage them that if you have slightly different ideas, you want to do a bit differently, brilliant. Those are the kind of people that are needed in companies. Those are the kind of people that are needed in society, because for too long, it has been very result orientated. You go for a result, you shelf your trophy, your title, your certain income you might have, the car you drive, the house you live in, and then what? I don't think it's any surprise that there is so much depression in this world and people lacking purpose. So that's been my highlight and my low light in my earlier life. There's been many different ones, but I think that's where that whole message, looking back at it now, started.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think this whole COVID-19 time has caused time for self-reflection. I think people have had time to reevaluate what's important in life, and listen to those people who perhaps were trying to talk about maybe there's more to life than materialism, than money and things. And as fun as it is going for money and big business and things, it's also so crucial, wouldn't you agree, to be able to have love, to be able to have acceptance of knowing who you are, of doing good to other people, and really money and fame and fortune and titles and things only gets you so far. And, you know, it's been a real eye opener for many people who
Absolutely.
have had their sort of their anchor in what is only, you know, very loosely held things, which, you know, obviously couldn't survive this coronavirus, for example, which is non-discriminant, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree, Luke. I think that probably if I scan in a helicopter over my whole working life, then the most successful people to the outside world were in many ways also the people that had massive personal troubles and personal struggles. I think that the one thing I say to people the most is that you have two lives. You have the life you live and the unlived life inside you. Now, that might sound a little bit poetic, but I truly know that to be the case. So there's not really a week that goes by that somebody says to me, I'm so-and-so, and these are my title, and I get the whole rigmarole of who they are and how they project themselves in society. Very often followed by, if I had the time, if I had the money, if I had the space, I would love to be doing this. So I often say to people, why are you not doing that? Because that tension between the lived life and the unlived life can sometimes become unbearable. And I think you're absolutely right that the COVID crisis has made people reflect on that. We all of a sudden say, actually, we are reliant upon certain essential people in society, the people who go to work to save our lives, and people who empty the bins, and people who work in shops and so on. So a lot of people have been chasing some sort of empty dream, which I don't think is actually based in their true desires, but is something they feel they ought to be chasing, because once upon a time they were taught it, like my parents were trying to say to me. You either, these are my father's true words, and he always said it jokingly, but I now wonder whether it was actually true. Well, you either get a title, Kirsten, or you become famous. Neither of them really sat that well with me. And so I then first of all said, I'm going to drama school, which didn't land at all well. But gradually, and I did, but gradually I found my way. There is something called the University of Life. I absolutely believe in that. Yeah, absolutely. You know, you've got the bruises and the scars, because it's not an easy, qualification to get. And actually, it never ends either. That's the other thing. But there are so many lessons to be learned in life, and from interacting with one another, from actually making mistakes. I interviewed a wonderful man called Professor Paul Isker a little while ago for my podcast, and he actually has set up the Institute of Brilliant Failures. And he said to me, Kirsten, people are so frightened to make mistakes in business and elsewhere. We're fine with our 2 or 3 year olds do it. But adults, oh, God, no. How else can you learn anything? You've got to make mistakes. And for a long time, I think personally, I saw the fact that I didn't come straight out of school, done a university degree, and did what my peers did, who were still back in Holland, as a bit of a failure. Now, the fact that I have lived in various countries, I speak multiple languages, not Spanish fluently yet, but what's the base? But that is actually part of, I think, what gives us some heart in work, and also gives us the ability to relate to other people. There is a lot of people who are unhappy, which is crazy considering the fact that we have such richness in our part of the world.
That's right.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think you're right. You know, University of Life can be a tough degree to have, and one that is a constant learning piece. But I think it does give us more opportunity to empathise and engage with other people. I know, similar to you, I didn't take the traditional route and spent many years worried that the fact that I started as a hairdresser was my failing, and actually now see it's my strength, because it allows you to connect with people and to be interested in them and to hear their story. And, you know, for you, you've obviously maximized on that, and actually now also speaking multiple languages and having such great richness in your experiences, as well as richness in kind of the important things in life about love and family, and that is credit to the degree that you got at the University of Life. So
it is important. It's important to measure these things. Like when you're saying that, you're saying, Christine, about what's important and things. It reminds me of a story. My father was a headmaster as well, and he used to tell me a story sometimes of there was a businessman who walked along this river, and he came across this fisherman who was sitting on the side, relaxing and just fishing for his fish to be able to sell. And the businessman said, "Why don't you buy a boat and set up multiple boats?" And he said, "Why do I do that?" He said, "Well, then you'll catch more fish, right? And then what?" He said, "Then you can sell more fish." And he said, "Then what? Then you'll make money and you'll have multiple boats." And he said, "So then what?" He said, "Well, then what do I do with that money?" He said, "Well, then you can sit on the side of a river and relax." He said, "Well, I'm doing that now."
Yeah. Yeah, you see, I totally and utterly agree with that story. And it doesn't mean that people shouldn't have big ambitions and big goals, because that's fabulous to have. I just think it's context. And I also think it's got to do with authenticity. Are you being true to yourself? Are you actually following somebody else's dream or somebody else's obligation or the rules? Because I do think that if you go through life ticking boxes, then you are going to sell yourself short. There is so much I would love to say, for instance, about education, which now some of which is actually proving right. The fact that, we have to go to school and get a certain exam done to a certain level. And by saying this, I don't for a second believe that all education is wrong, but I think it needs to be placed within the current times. Things are changing. We can learn things. I do a lesson in some of my talks, which is called the cause, process, and result. And very often that's a quick rush where people trying to not actually look what is motivating them. They rush the process to get to some sort of result so they can go, look, I've got this diploma. Look, I've got this T-shirt. Whereas actually, I think in the process, that's where we can learn. That's where you make mistakes. That's why you have to adapt. And so it's no longer for me the survival of the fittest. It is the survival of the most adaptable. And I see this week in, week out with the people and the companies that I work with. People are so much more talented, but because it doesn't necessarily fit in a particular box of whether it's A-levels or GCSEs or a degree of some sort, they dismiss it. And you can't capture intelligence and ability always in an educational framework. So I think it's really for business owners also to go back to what kind of talent have you got around the table. But for individual people is looking at what am I good in? And one of the things I get my clients to do is to go back to when they were a child, because it is very interesting to see what you were naturally drawn towards or interested in. But very often people chuck it out if it doesn't fit, well, I'm not good in English or I'm not good at maths kind of curriculum. What if you are interested or very drawn or particularly talented in caring for other people, or you're fantastic at making poems, or you're fantastic expressing yourself with your body? There is hundreds, millions, maybe different types of intelligences. And I have a real issue with the fact that education just narrows it down too much. And I work with a lot of people who I would say are scarred by their education. And they carry that burden all throughout their lives. I worked with a lady last year who, through certain circumstances, had been made redundant. And I was going to work with her on a couple of months process so that she could get a new job. And at one stage, I quite innocently said to her, "Do you want a job?" And she got annoyed with me because she said, "Well, why are you asking me this question? This is ridiculous. Of course I want a job." Well, it actually turned out that she's an incredibly creative person, unbelievably talented with her hands, made wonderful things for the home. And she just never, ever thought that she would be able to do anything other than administrative work, because that's what her parents told her to do. Get yourself an administrative job, because that way you'll always have work.
Absolutely, that's right. I mean, what I'm also interested in, I mean, that's the getting the balance right and the perspective, isn't it? It's how you look at it in the angle, and how you think about what you think about. My other question, which I'd love to ask you, is what do you believe is going to be the key for business and individuals in the new normal future?
Well, I already said to you just now that I really believe it's survival of the most adaptable rather than of the fittest. And I think that is absolutely key. I think still, even though there is so much fabulous technology, there's different ways of thinking, there are incredibly talented people, we don't recognize it all, and we don't translate it all. We still too hang up, I think, to rules and regulations and pieces of paper that need to be filled in. I think this is a time more than ever to see if you're a business owner who you've got sitting around the table. Get people to put their ideas forward and be agile. So a lot of my business clients at the moment are under the theme of diversification. How can you diversify? Because I think you can do two things. You can either tear your hair out and think, my goodness, we're all going to go into a recession. This is terrible. Businesses are going to go under. And of course, that will be, sadly, the inevitable result of some of the things that are happening. But there are also huge opportunities. And I think the other, aside from agility and aside from diversification, is to really collaborate with people. I think putting brains together, putting ideas together, you can come up with the best solutions.
Absolutely.
No, completely agree. And I think I love the thought about us all being more agile. And, similarly, when we were talking earlier, I think we're not going to go back to our past. I think we're going to move forward to our future. And it is going to be an ability to augment a little bit more of the traditional way we worked and more remote working, because we've now proven that actually you can stay connected. You can be globally connected and do it from your home and still be, be productive and still see real innovation. And I think the moment of enforced pause has allowed people to reflect. And we often find in history that in those moments of pause, that's when people have been really innovative, because they've had a bit more space to be able to tap into their creativity, to your point earlier. What I'd love to know is, you've obviously got so many lessons, but if you could go back and tell your younger self key piece of advice, what would it be?
The key piece, I don't have to think about that for 1 second, Kim, because it's the key piece of advice that I give to my clients and that I've written a book about it, is you got to follow your passion. You got to follow your itch. You got to not doubt yourself too much, because the amount of brain space and energy, that lack of confidence and that self-doubt is taken up valuable resources of you really following your path. I sometimes say to clients, look, if you were to look up Leonardo da Vinci in Google, then it doesn't just say that he did one thing. He had lots and lots of different skills. These days, we're trying to confine ourselves to, well, I am a dentist or I am a hairdresser. You can be multiple things, and go back to your own journey and see the things that you were drawn to, you're passionate about, and celebrate them. I think that certainly in my early journey, I just wondered, is this okay? Can I do this? Perhaps I should do a little bit more of the conventional stuff, because not fitting in felt terribly lonely at times. Now I'm trying to encourage people, stand out, absolutely stand out from the crowd, be you, because the story you tell will always be 100% unique and will be a lesson for other people, and you'll be authentic. And, at the end of the day, you only have one life. So live it to the full, and don't waste precious resources on trying to meet other people's rules, tick boxes, and so on. Really find it, what is that drives you.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that. That's amazing. I mean, I'm going to ask Kim Ebouter to summarize some of the good points, because there have been some real nuggets and appreciate. But it's lovely to be able to put a perspective and a fresh perspective on what is a challenging times, but actually is some fantastic opportunities, self-reflection, to work on ourselves and collaborate. I think wonderful. So thank you so much, Kirsten. Yeah, Kim Ebouter, what would you?
Well, it's been an absolute delight, Kirsten, as always. I could chat to you literally all day. It's always fascinating. I think for me, there's been so many nuggets in here. I loved the piece that you said around starting with the heart, and imagining if we all just did the things that made our soul sing. That's really got to be the kind of key piece, and going back and thinking about where that was naturally for you as a child. So what were the things that you were drawn towards? Where did you, were you creative? Did you love art? And I did. I used to love painting and drawing. I don't do any of that now, but you're making me think maybe I should go back and have a look. And I also loved the piece about your unlived life. So thinking about what is that thing that's niggling inside all of us that's saying maybe we should be doing this. And I think often it's not our darkness that scares us, it's our light. It's the fact that actually we might be really good at something, and that feels a little bit ego. And we're all told ego's bad, but I think it's digging in and saying you were here for a purpose. And me, I love a quote. So for me, it reminds me of Pablo Picasso's, which is that the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And it just came to mind from kind of chatting to you that seems to be it. It's like, go and find your purpose. Be you. Be authentically who you are, and don't be afraid to stand out, and then go and live your dream. And that's inspiring for all of us. I think we can all take something from that and just go and be a little bit braver.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I love those quotes, Kim, as always. They're very inspiring. Just a very short note on to finish on.
Yeah,
yesterday in Spain was the first time in this area in Andalusia that we were allowed out of the gate. So we went officially into phase 1. And I had a real lump in my throat as we went into the streets where there's many Spanish flags with black ribbons on them, because so many people obviously have lost loved ones. And you could see people everywhere with face masks on and gloves on. But at the same time, shops were opening, people were putting the flowers out, and they were polishing the fruit, and they were really trying to stick together to say, come on, let's do this. Because I really believe it's not what happens, it's how you deal with it that makes all the difference. And I saw that in the people, and it gave me a real boost, because even though I'm in a beautiful surroundings here, I chose to be here, and therefore I feel blessed with the things I can do here. But people perhaps watching or listening now, reflect on your own journeys. What kind of choices would you make if you could? And if it wasn't the what, how would you deal with your life right now? What twists and turns can you take? Because I think you'll regret far more the things that you didn't do than the things you did.
Absolutely. Amazing advice as always, and a great way to go and live our lives.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. We wish you a wonderful day, week and year. And I know it can be, it really can be. And so thank you so much. Kim Ebouter, thank you. We want to say thank you to our listeners and watchers, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We've had a wonderful Kirsten set the bar very high, and yet we've got Sadhana join us next week, author of a wonderful book, award-winning international author. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you next week. I think also I'm going to finish on a quote myself. A diamond is just a piece of charcoal that's handled stress exceptionally well. A diamond is just a piece of charcoal that handled stress exceptionally well. Have a great week, and thank you. We look forward to seeing you again on Global Futurists.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. You're looking great.
We are on a mission to reach the world and inspire millions. We invite you to join us in 3 simple ways. Like the show and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave 5 stars on the Apple Podcast. Share this on social media. We look forward to you joining us next week. Welcome to Global Futurists.